Afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this wonderful Wednesday afternoon. It's just going to get better because we've got a great business spotlight interview today. We've got Simon from Optimise Accountants. Simon, tell us all about your business.
Thank you, Tim, for the invite, first of all. I appreciate being on here with you. And my name is Simon Misiewicz. People do call me Simon Mischief because it's easier to pronounce rather than Misiewicz. I've worked and co-owned Optimise Accountants. That's been going since 2003. We are accountants, so it's not going to be a total boring interview today. I will try and liven it up, I promise you. We focus on investors. Investors, I mean by property, buy-to-let property investments, people that have ISAs, EFTs, cryptocurrencies, stocks and shares, you name it, whatever type of investments you can think of, we help people become tax efficient with those. Not just for the short term, but for the family as a whole, and thinking about inheritance tax as well.
Thanks for that. And I think that's a really pertinent thing to say at the moment because there's a lot of angst in the business community
Mm.
about inheritance tax and the new stuff that the government's put in. So, how do you actually go about helping them?
Yeah, so we provide a lot of marketing materials on YouTube. I think that's our go-to at the minute in terms of making people aware of the situation and what they can do. So a typical notice that you've just mentioned is inheritance tax and the fact that from April 2027, pensions will be part of your estate for inheritance tax. And that is one of the reasons why we decided to do Optimize 2.0, which is going to be launched in September, interesting enough, where we focus on legacy planning. So it is about really understanding these new rules that's coming into play, helping people that aren't aware of things like pensions being part of the estate. What does it mean for people? It changes fundamentally what people used to think about inheritance tax planning because the government, for many years, decades, have been asking employers and employees to invest into their pensions because it saves on tax in the interim period whilst before they retire, and they also promised that it wouldn't be subject to inheritance tax. And it does feel as though the government have now turned face on that promise and then said, well, yes, you need to contribute towards your retirement, but the promise we made that it wouldn't be part of inheritance tax, we've now turned that around and we're going to charge you in full. So there's a lot of people quite rightly feeling quite angst about that. And we are here to help those people to understand the impact it has on their legacy and what they can do about it.
And I suppose there are some practical things they actually can do about it. Obviously, first and foremost, go to your YouTube channel and have a look at that.
Yes.
Just be a bit of a plug there, Simon. And but just give us one little snippet of what they could actually potentially do.
So mostly, we have to think about the how inheritance tax is calculated. So every individual in the UK has a lifetime allowance of £325,000 that they can gift to their loved ones without paying any inheritance tax. As a couple, that's doubled, so it's £650,000. And then adding to that is something called a residential nil rate ban. So there is a potential that £1 million worth of assets could be passed on to children free from inheritance tax. But the excess beyond that amount will be subject to 40% tax. Now, how do you get around that? One of the things many people are doing is gifting assets. That's a big call for. So as long as you gift an asset, you survive for 7 years, typically that gift could fall out of your estate. And therefore, when you pass away, it's no longer considered for inheritance tax purposes. So that's one of the big things that we have. That in itself causes problems because there are certain assets that you can gift away to loved ones that could be subject to capital gains tax. So then you have this issue of, well, do I pay capital gains tax? And there are ways of sometimes mitigating that, but there are mistakes I see accountants make by saying, yes, gift it away, then oops. yeah, I forgot to tell you about this huge capital gains tax you now have to pay. Um, and then in the future, you may say, well, actually, there are ways to for succession, pass your business on to your children and gift away shares over time. So there are many things that people could do, and I still maintain that inheritance tax is an optional tax. It's not something that is going to be forced upon you, and with the right tax plan, you can mitigate inheritance tax in full.
That is a really interesting statement and a great share for that. And I think lots of people's ears will have actually pricked up on that. Going back, 2003, you set up the business.
Mm.
What have you seen change? Forget the legal stuff in terms of that. What have you seen change in your industry the most over the last few years, in fact, over that time?
I think the level of sophistication of tax knowledge. When I first started, I can recall conversations I used to have with clients, especially landlords and property investors, we have to bear in mind, that would ask the questions such as, is this hammer offsettable against my rental income, right? Simple yes and no. And how do you go about putting that receipt against your bookkeeping? Simple question. Now the type of questions are, oh, I wish to set up a family investment company. I wish to have my children have shares, and I want to make sure I maintain control of that company. What kind of structure do I need? It's a fundamental shift from what we used to be asked to what we're being asked now. So tax has not changed fundamentally, but the positioning and awareness of tax with individuals has certainly been become a lot more sophisticated.
And what do you put that down to?
I think there's a lot more awareness. Things like YouTube. We are now at 27,000 subscribers, so we get a lot of information out. Of course, it's not just us talking about taxation, but I think with the UK especially, there's been a lot of changes in regards to tax regulation. And that in itself brings curiosity, brings fear, brings doubt in terms of what people can and cannot do. As a consequence of all those changes, people will inevitably ask very good questions, at which they deserve answers, which there are various marketing efforts now, such as YouTube websites, portals, forums. There's a lot more information out there for people to consume. The problem is with information online, which I'm sure you've seen yourself, is that many web pages become out of date. So even though tax legislation changes, doesn't mean that the page that's showing on Google page one is correct. Simply because it's got SEO doesn't mean that the page has been updated for a number of years and could easily give you the incorrect information. So yes, marketing is fantastic. It gives you awareness, but as I always say to people is make sure you get tax advice before you do anything in life.
Brilliant. Well, that's a great share, great learning for everybody. So, talking about learnings, obviously you've been set up the business in 2003. So, what's been the biggest learning for you over that time as a business owner?
I think for me, I had a conversation just over the weekend with another business owner who's a good friend of mine. And they are probably in the same position I was when I first started, as in a business owner is not a self-employed person. A business owner is someone who has products and services that they sell, but typically they would have other people run it for them. So it's easy to say I'm a business owner, but actually you could be self-employed. What I mean by that is you're still working 9 to 5 doing the actual business. You're not working on the business, you're working in the business. And I was doing that probably for 10 years from 2003, 2013, even beyond 2015, 16. A light bulb went off to say, well, eventually I want to retire or I will pass away. Inevitably, that will happen. But I want Optimize to carry on. How do I manage that? So I looked at my team and started to look at training, requirements for them, how for them to become account managers to look after clients from cradle to grave without any involvement from me whatsoever. I might provide support, but that is all it is going to be. I see myself more of a facilitator than I do a business owner because I help them run the business and look after clients, which we do very well at. And I say we do it very well because it doesn't involve me.
What a great share again. Absolutely brilliant. So what are the main challenges going forwards?
I think challenges for and I'm going to talk about this globally rather than tax specific or accountancy specific because there are a lot of changes coming along. And again, coming up for this interview today, I started to reflect on my days of being a business owner and what challenges we face, but also challenges that every business will face. And I think it's fair to say that if you look at the way that blue collar workers have challenges in terms of working in factories or manufactories or what I would call the people that do physical building of stuff, delivery of services, they face challenges from robotics. And we always felt that, well, that would take away jobs. That hasn't happened. You know, robotics has been with us now since the 1950s in mainstream. And that hasn't really, yes, it's automated some jobs, but we've now got new jobs where blue collars will work. We thought that we are thinking now that AI from a white collar perspective would wipe out those jobs as well, or will wipe out those jobs, I should say. And again, I don't think that's the case. I think what will happen is that people like yourself and myself will have new roles to play in our businesses, but it will be facilitated and supported by AI and technology, but it won't necessarily replace it. It will just mean we get things done quicker. So we can help more people. But so I think it's fundamentally going to wipe us all out. No, I'm not that pessimistic. I just think that people that aren't embracing robotics and AI will face challenges. They will probably be the ones that become extinct, unfortunately, because they're not moving with the times. I think it's about not fearing these movements of robotics and AI, but more about embracing it and what it can do to help us.
Yeah, that's a really good share actually, because it's like anything, false expectations appearing real, fear.
Mm,
And it's the fear of the unknown more than anything else. Whereas if
yeah.
you actually educate, then ultimately the fear disappears. So that's a really, really good share. Thanks for that, Simon. So big going 2003, what do you actually attribute your growth to?
Um, it's something that Bill Gates, funny enough, said in one of his books, which I've read many of them. One of the things he said was, if I had to start again, I would put my one last dollar into marketing. And I reflect on that greatly because it doesn't matter how great you are in delivering a product or a service. If no one knows about you, you could be as good as you want to be. You could be the best in the world, but no one will buy from you because no one knows you. So I think it is about how do you take your product and service, make it as good as you can, but you need to also have a voice in the mainstream to say, hey, this is who we are, gain awareness, make sure that people kind of come to know how to get to you, and then make sure you have loyalty for them then to recommend their friends, family to you as well. I think that's pretty much the biggest thing for me is it is around marketing. And my job now, if I'm honest, in Optimize is purely marketing. It is understanding who is our strategic partners out there, what are the best social media platforms for us to use, how does AI and SEO work on web pages. That's pretty much where my focus is right now.
Brilliant. Yeah, marketing is free when I get it right. It's as
Yeah, of
simple as
course.
that.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. Final question, Simon. What's the best advice you give to an 18-year-old you?
I think if we reflect on me being an 18-year-old, is to take your enthusiasm, um, profits and passions are aligned. What I mean by that is if you have a passion, you can turn it into a profit. But you need to have someone arms around you. You need mentors, you need coaches, you need to have someone who is older, wiser than your good self. That's not to say that they are more intelligent, by the way, that is not the case, but they may have the experience to reflect on other people that they've helped that can pass that knowledge on to you. If I could learn from people who was in my industry, who would put an arm around me back when I first started, I would pay handsomely for that because I've made some mistakes. I've made lots of mistakes, if I'm totally honest with you. And it's really understanding what those mistakes are, how you could avoid them. You won't gain that from AI. You won't gain that from, looking at websites. But someone who is mature enough, experienced enough, especially in your sector, to say, hey, don't do that because I've seen this done time and time again. Why don't we take this approach instead? And it's having that guided arm around the shoulder. A business owner, especially when you're young, it can be an exciting opportunity, but it can also be a lonely, frightening experience as well, where you feel that you can't turn to anyone and you feel isolated and everything you do when it goes wrong does go wrong. Sometimes you just need a reassuring arm around you to say, no, not everything is wrong. We just need to make sure we focus in the right area to develop your business and to develop you as an individual. I think that is what I would suggest.
Brilliant. What a great way to finish the interview. Simon, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.